In this video, I'm going to talk about Dan Ashworth, who's just resigned as the Director of Football at Brighton. Now, this isn't a news video. I'm not trying to tell you something you don't already know about him resigning and probably joining Newcastle United. I think there's a lot of people out there who don't understand exactly what he's going to do as a Director of Football at Newcastle and how he'll restructure the club in order to be, for us to become a successful club in the future. So I'm going to drill into this with a little bit more detail. So the video is going to be broken down into three parts. The first part is what exactly is a Director of Football, or technical director, or sporting director. They're all kind of much the same. Second part is going to be what do Newcastle United need a sporting director? What will it bring? And thirdly, who is Dan Ashworth and what exactly is he going to do as Newcastle sporting director, and how he'll work with Eddie Howe and the owners. So you don't want to miss this video. Stay till the end. It's coming up. Hello, my name's Eddie. Welcome to my channel Tyneside Life, and if you love all things Newcastle and Geordieland in general, anything to do with football, the history and the culture, you've landed on the right channel. So don't forget to subscribe if you're new here, so you don't miss out on any future videos when I release them. So without any further ado, let's get into the main body of this video. And part one is what exactly is a Director of Football? Well, they form part of principally the senior management team. Most directors of football deal principally with the transfer policy of the club, working closely with the owners and the manager to make sure they get the right type of player in for that particular club. They'll oversee the youth development in the academy and oversee the overarching playing philosophy of that particular club. They'll help negotiate player contracts and help to provide some stability with the club with a clear strategy for the progression of the club, and report directly to the owners. So those are that's kind of the broad remit of a Director of Football. Famous Director of Footballs include Txiki Begiristain of Man City, who was formerly of Barcelona till about 2012, and he helped bring that whole Barcelona philosophy and the style of football that they play to Man City, and why they're such a huge success at the moment. You've got Michael Edwards of Liverpool, and look at Liverpool where they are right now, but you have Leonardo of PSG, who are a rising dominant force in European football at the moment. For an example of a bad Director of Football, you could look at Dennis Wise when he was appointed under another term in about 2008, working with Kevin Keegan. They clashed because they wanted a different type of player coming to the club. So that's an example of where it didn't quite work. So second part is, do Newcastle United actually need a Director of Football? Well, to answer that, let's have a look at what Newcastle's looked like over the past 14 years without a real dedicated technical director or Director of Football. I know they had Lee Charnley in charge as a managing director for a lot of years, and he just basically oversaw the transfer policy of the club, but he had no autonomy. He was just executing the instructions from Mike Ashley. So it was a system that really, he was there in name only and just taking some of the workload off Mike Ashley. There's been no progressive transfer policy to drive the club forward over a lot of years, and look what's happened. There's been a lack of communication between the owners and the manager, and the owners and the fan base, and that's caused a lot of disillusionment and frustration, and it boils over into anger, and no workable strategy to integrate players from the youth and academy system into the first team, with the exception of Sean Longstaff and briefly Matty Longstaff. Other players who have come through the system have just kind of dissipated into lower league football clubs. So this area being a hotbed of talented footballers, it's just been a huge waste of all this talent coming through the ranks that we could have utilised far better. So under our current ownership, could we have benefited for having an already established Director of Football? Well, absolutely. There's no secret that Amanda Staveley et al. Lack football knowledge and experience, and that's been telling. I also think, in my opinion, we did slightly better than I thought we'd do in the transfer window. I think they could have done a lot better than they did if they already had established Director of Football in place, rather than just a temporary one that we've been using, who was just kind of overseeing the negotiation process. And of course, Eddie Howe, as brilliant as he is, in my opinion, he can't do everything. He can't have his fingers on all the buttons, spinning all the plates at the same time. He's got a massive job just turning this first team around into a club that hopefully is going to survive in the Premier League. But also the football philosophy needs managing from the youth team, the academy, and into the first team. That's something that's going to help our club. But also the women's team needs to be has a better strategy, and I know there's a lot of people doing a lot of great work with the women's football team, and they're doing really well at the moment. But I think with a dedicated director of football, I think it's just going to elevate the women's team up as well in the next 3 to 5 years, I think, to be playing at the very highest level. So last part, who is Dan Ashworth, and what will he bring to Newcastle United? If you don't know him, he's 50 years old. He's been in a sporting director of football capacity for West Bromwich Albion for a few years before moving on to England for 6 years, 2012 to 2018, and then for the last 3 years or so working with Brighton. He's most famous for his 6 years working with the England FA with Gareth Southgate as England's Director of Elite Development for overhauling the whole system to help create a winning senior teams in the men's and the women's game. So it hasn't just been about Gareth Southgate. A lot of experts collectively kind of individually agree that the real driving force behind England's current success, getting to the semis in Russia in 2018 and reaching the final in the recent Euros, has been predominantly about what Dan Ashworth has done in just kind of completely restructuring the England setup and everything that goes on at St George's Park. He looked at the most successful national teams and realised that the successful teams, their players had come through a system whereby they were all used to the pressure of wearing their national shirt in football games that had far more experienced youth systems. So Dan Ashworth and the rest of the team developed an under 15s, 18s and 20s England squad, with the focus being that if a player comes through the whole system and plays through all the group stages and getting to the later stages of competitions, a player will have played or have at least 60 experiences wearing the shirt before they break into the first team, and that stands a player in a much better stead to handle the pressure and be a far more developed player at the highest level. He also helped devise the vision of kind of an 8 to 10 year plan whereby a crop of England players would be at their peak for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. They'll be in their mid to late 20s. So in order to achieve this sort of success with this plan, there has to be some sort of strategy, and he developed that in 2014. It was called England's DNA strategic plan, and it was the plan, like I've just mentioned, to get a crop of players through the youth system into the first team so that they hit their peak for the 2022 World Cup. And the DNA plan has 5 core strands to it. The first one is who we are, and this is about setting clear values and beliefs for the players, and by developing a consistent positive behaviour pattern amongst them. Second is how we play, so that through the youth system, from the 15s to the 18s, 20s, under 21s to the full national team, there's a consistent style of playing through that system, so there's no great shock to the system when they move up a level. 3 is a future England player, about developing the talent in that individual so that they make the full national team and that they have the experience behind them to handle that sort of pressure. 4 is how we coach, and that's a consistent methodology of coaching right through the various levels. And lastly, number 5 is the support, and that's providing specialist support in terms of medical, scientific, analytical and psychological disciplines that each player is going to need to help them be the best version of themselves. So what will Dan Ashworth bring to Newcastle United? What exactly will he do to restructure the club? Well, I think he'll bring with him that experience that he had with the England FA, that DNA blueprint that I've just been talking about, to Newcastle United, to turn it into a progressive and more sustainable club in terms of the quality of the players that they bring in, but the money that they're going to spend. But also as well, a great example of how good this guy is what he's done with Brighton. He's turned Brighton from 3-4 years ago, which was a team that was regular bottom 6 relegation prospect, into a team in a club That is an example of how a football club should be run. They're an exciting team. They've got first-class training facilities, and they're now competing in the top half of the table. So for me, Dan Ashworth and Eddie Howe are just singing out of the same hymn book. They're both progressive. They're both students of the modern football game. They love trying to be the best versions of themselves to help bring out the best in their players. And I think they'll work seamlessly together. They both have clear objectives on the way forward for the club, and I think they're both really excited to be part of the Newcastle United revolution. So when is Dan Ashworth going to join Newcastle United? Well, there seems to be a bit of a stumbling block with this, because at the moment he's working a period of notice, which I believe, or I understand that it could actually go past the summer transfer window. But I understand that there's currently some negotiations going on where I think Brighton are going to want a really hefty compensation package to take Dan Ashworth away from his contractual obligations sooner rather than later. What do I think of his appointment? Well, if he can do what he's done to England and turn the squad into the successful team that it is now, and turned Brighton into a relegation prospect, into the time of progressive club that they are, I'm really excited about what he can do with Newcastle United and the finance backing that he is going to get and the vision that the owners have got. I think he's going to be chomping at the bit, and I think he's an absolute brilliant appointment. And working closely with Eddie Howe, who in my opinion I think is a future England manager, I think we've just got such an exciting few years ahead of us, and the sky's the limit.